I'm Andrew Joseph Keith, and in this video I'm going to show you my method for turning a nail into the best sculpting tool in the world, or at least my favorite sculpting tool. If you could only have one tool for sculpting, I would recommend it being this tool. Let's start off by talking about the tools that I'll be using. As far as the nail itself, for the medium tool, I use a nail that's just over 6 inches long, and it's about 3/8 of an inch thick. This is a galvanized steel nail. For the thinner version of the tool, I use a nail that's 7 inches long and just under that 3/8 of an inch thick. For the large version of the tool, I cut up sections of welded wire fencing, and these sections start at about 7.5 inches long, and they're about 1/4 of an inch thick. The fencing I already had on the property, and to cut up this wire fencing, you could use the angle grinder, which I use later, or I use some bolt cutters, and that works fine. And the nails I purchased very cheap at Habitat for Humanity. All of the materials and tools that I used, I already had, so I didn't need to purchase anything for this project. So with some pretty basic tools, you can get the job done, and you can even do a lot by hand. The first step of the process is flattening the head of the tool. Now, ideally, you might use a forge and an anvil and a blacksmith's hammer. I didn't have any of those things, so I used a fireplace that I made from the broiler of our home. I cut that up. When they replaced the AC in the house, they just left the old broiler in the basement, so I cut it up and made a fireplace in the barn. I do have a heat gun that I used for other projects, and so when the fire died down just to the coals, I was able to point that heat gun at the fire and get it a lot hotter, which was helpful for getting the tips of the metal red hot to make it easier to forge. Turns out anvils are really expensive. I didn't have an anvil, but I did have a 20-pound dumbbell weight. Can't remember where I got it. At first, I tried putting this weight on some cinder blocks, but then every time I'd hit it, the cinder blocks that were stacked on top of each other would move. So I got a ratchet strap and I strapped the whole thing together. It still moves. It still moves slowly. It moves a little bit slower, but it works. You know, it's not ideal, but it works. For the hammer, I have a 3-pound stone sculptor's hammer that I got off of Amazon. And this has worked great for my stone sculpting as well as this project. And I'll put some affiliate links below, as well as a link if you'd like to purchase some of these handmade sculpting tools from Kickstarter. Big thank you to anybody that supports the Kickstarter. And if that's over, you can message me directly on Instagram at AndrewJosephKeith15 if you're interested in purchasing some of these tools from me. So I put the pieces of metal in the fire to heat up. Once it's red hot at the end, I use some adjustable pliers to take it out of the fireplace. I also have this old leather glove that I found in one of the sheds on the property when we moved in. One man's trash is another man's treasure, as they say. The glove didn't feel like enough, so I also took a piece of cloth and wrapped that around the hot metal as I was forging it, and I found that that worked pretty good as long as the cool end of the tool was not too hot. If it was too hot, then it started smoking and wasn't that pleasant. So to forge the head, it's pretty straightforward. I just hammer the head several times and just try to get it to flatten and mushroom out and get a nice taper towards the end. The forging part is actually probably the easiest part of this whole build. The grinding, sanding, and polishing later on requires a lot more time and effort. I'm not sure if you could cold forge this. I haven't tried it. If anybody's tried this and been able to find success cold forging, let me know in the comments below. So I hammer entirely one side of the tool, and this top side gets a slight back curve to it as I hammer it. And then the down side that's against the anvil, or in this case the weight, I lift that up just to give it a slight back curve. So we want it mushroomed out at the top and just a slight curve back. When you do this with the nail, usually there's a little bit of a point that we need to grind away later. But I've been able to get pretty close to the finished shape of the tool by forging it with these sections of metal that I've cut off more flat. Now that we've got the tool forged, one end forged, we can move to the grinding phase. And I only do one end because I like to have the other end a little bit smaller and a different shape. And we'll talk about that as we get into the grinding. And if you didn't have a grinder, you could simply use a file. I use a 7-inch angle grinder with a cheap grinding wheel that it came with, just because that's a lot faster, but you could do this on a file if you had to. I'm just going to show the motion So basically we want to keep this kind of rounded curve, this rounded curve to the end of the tool. We want to maintain that. And so you're kind of just either against the file or against the grinder. I'm just kind of pulling up as I'm grinding. This front part we want to be very flat. So the part that has the convex curve to it, convex meaning bending outward, we want to be pretty flat. And then the concave side, on the other side, the part that we were hammering on, we're going to be rounding that off. So it's maybe the opposite of what you think. You might think that we would be rounding off this side so that it's nice and round, but we're actually going to be rounding off this back side. I like to think of this as the back side, the part that we were hammering that has a little bit of the back curve to it. So we're going to try to keep it pretty flat, but not perfectly flat. I'll occasionally wiggle it from side to side just a little bit, just to round it off, but mostly flat on this side. I found that if I did it perfectly flat and only ground forward and back, then it just left a sharp edge in the clay when I would round off and texture parts of the clay. So I would do things like this, and then it would leave that sharp edge. So just a little bit of roundness around the outside of the tool is what we're going for. So we're going to grind that smooth, and then we also want to touch up the end. So like on these nails, the tip is a little bit too pointy, so we want to round it off as well by grinding back and forth to get rid of that point and make it a rounded tip. Kind of a long teardrop shape is what we're going for. Once we've got that flatter side done and the rounded teardrop shape, then we can start to round off this concave area. Concave because it bends more inward. So this is the part that we were hammering. And to do that, so I'll demo on this. So if this is the grinder, the motion that I'm going to be doing is tilting the tool at about a 45-degree angle and twisting it between my fingers, back and forth, and then lowering that angle as I'm grinding. So start up high, grind, lower that angle, twisting back and forth, and that rounds off this front part. Once that's rounded, then I'll come with the edge of the angle grinder and I'll put the tool so that the flat end is at about a 45-degree angle, and I'll start to round off that edge by changing the angle slightly, rolling it between my fingers, and just pulling off that corner, that metal on the corner, until it rounds off this sharp corner right here. So just round, and then the same thing on the other side till I get to a 90-degree, and then I'll go back and do this a couple times until I feel like this back side is nice and rounded, and that this back plane, this rounded back plane, connects with that flat front plane. We want kind of a sharp corner between the two sides. Then what I like to do is hold the tool in my hand so that the flat, rounded, convex part of the tool is facing me, facing up towards me, that part right there. And then on the grinder, I grind away by lifting and rounding off this smaller end. So I'm going to put a rounded curve to this. Curve, until that is nice and curved. Then I'll flip the tool around, and just below that, I'll come to the edge of the angle grinder and I'll grind away until there's a little indent or a hook on the back side. So I've got a curve on what we'll call the front side and a little indent, or like almost like you took that shape of the teardrop and then cut out a little piece of that teardrop shape on the back side of the tool. And then I'll smooth that out with the angle grinder. And with this side of the tool, with the smaller end, I want to do it kind of the opposite of the large end. So the large end, the convex part was flat and the concave part was rounded. On the back end, the convex part is going to be rounded. We're going to round off that convex part, and the concave part is going to be really flat. And so that concave part, I'm going to leave it pretty much flat and the shape that was made by the angle grinder, and then go back to that side that we rounded off at the beginning and take that and roll it back and forth, and move the angle up to where it's kind of at the tip, and then roll it from basically 90 degrees to, what is that? Would that be 0 degrees? I don't know. But from up here, rolling it all the way down and we're going to round that off to where it meets that concave shape that we've grinded into the back of the tool. After we've done that, then we've got the basic shape of the tool in place. And now we can move on to the sanding. So for the sanding, I use a variable speed angle grinder. So if you needed, you could use files for this entire project. You could use hand files for it. You could hold the tool in place with a vise, and then you could use files for this entire project. I have angle grinders for stone sculpting, so that's what I use. And then when we get to the sanding, we're going to do the same thing. So on the convex part, we're going to smooth it out, and we're going to get rid of all of the tool marks from the grinder. 200 grit. I have 50 grit and 100 grit, but I find the 200 gets rid of it pretty quickly, and it's in a little bit better shape. We get rid of all of the marks from the grinding. Then we go to the back side, get rid of those marks. We're going to basically do all of the same motions that we did with the grinder, but now with sanding. So turning the tool back, rounding it off, getting rid of all of the grinding scratches, going to the back of the tool, doing the same thing, rolling it back and forth to get a nice rounded tip on the convex part, and then with the concave part, hooking onto the edge of that sanding disc to get rid of those grinding marks, but keep that concave shape, nice flat cutout or plane with that part that we've removed on that back side of the tool. And then we repeat this sanding process with the 400 grit. I went on to the 800 grit, but the diamond sanding discs that I have don't work very well on metal. I think they're more for granite and stone. So once I got to 800, it wouldn't work as well. But the 400 sanding was able to get rid of most of the tool marks from the previous grinding, and it's small enough of a grit that it won't leave any noticeable marks in the clay as we're texturing. Then we can finally move on to the polishing stage. For this, I use some polishing compound and a small polishing wheel fit onto an electric die grinder. I found that these tools do eat up the polishing wheels pretty quickly. There's strings flying everywhere. But that polishing is a really important step to make the tool look and feel nice. Now you could leave the rusted look of the nail or the tool, the galvanized part of the nail, or this rusted part of this tool in place. Whatever coating they have on here will probably prevent the further rusting or deterioration of the tool. And I actually really like this look, but I thought that most people would probably prefer a clean metal look. And so I also sanded down the tool using that 400 grit, going up and down the tool, and then twisting the tool to get rid of that rusted look when it came to these, or to get rid of the galvanized part of the metal when it came to the nails. Now you could leave it as is. It's a nice looking tool, but I decided that I wanted to give it just a little bit more pizzazz, a little bit more something. So I heat treated just the ends of it, just on the stove, heated that up, just so that you could see some color going through the ends. This is mostly just decorative, but I do understand that bluing the metal, or heating it up to where it oxidizes and gets this bluish color, that does help preserve it from rusting. It probably won't preserve it that much. These tools will rust if they're left in a moist environment, or if you use them for water-based clay and then just leave them out, they will rust. Another thing that you could do if you want to seal it, if you want to use it for water-based clay, is you could dip it in some oil and then put it in the oven at about 400 degrees, leave it there for about half an hour, and then do the same thing a couple times. And that's the same process for seasoning a cast iron pan, and it creates kind of this black, dark layer around the metal that's waterproof, and it's kind of a non-stick layer. But I did find that it would sometimes flake off into the clay, and because I use mostly oil and wax-based clays, it didn't make sense to do it for my tools, and I didn't choose to do it for all the tools that I'll be shipping out. But that is an option if you want something that's a little bit more waterproof. You could season the tool. So that's the process for making and shaping the tool. Now let me just mention why I prefer this shape, why I really like this shape of the tool. The ends of it are very similar in shape to the tips of your fingers. If you look at that, like the tip of your finger, kind of flat on this side, the other side even more rounded, even more similar to the tip of your finger. And so the tool becomes an extension of your hand, an extension of your finger, And that way you're able to create a texture that really feels natural, in my opinion, and lifelike, especially if you use good texturing techniques, like going across the form instead of along the form. So instead of this, go across the form. It's like one of the biggest tips for texturing to make it look good. And then also varying the stroke, coming at it from different directions. Those things make a big difference. You can scoop little pieces of clay and then add it to the sculpture. On that back side, that concave side on the small end of the tool, you can use that for things like shaping the eyeball underneath the eyelids, because it's got that curve in it where you can reach in some of those really hard to get to areas. And so for the organic forms of the figure, I think this tool or a variation of this tool is just a must-have for every sculptor. I made a medium version, a thin version, and a large version, just because it is nice to have different sizes. Hopefully you found this video useful. If you have any questions about sculpting or the deep philosophical questions that make us ponder our place in the universe, leave those in the comments below. Join the Discord if you haven't already. That's free, and you can share your sculptures with other students of my sculpting courses. If you're not a student of my sculpting courses, I definitely recommend checking those out. The figure sculpting course, the portrait sculpting course, the hand sculpting course, and the stone sculpting course. I've really tried to put all of the information that you would need into those courses so that you can find success sculpting the human form. If you want to purchase one of these tools from me, you can get that on Kickstarter, or if the Kickstarter is no longer available, you can message me on Instagram at AndrewJosephKeith15 that you'd like one of these tools, and I'll send you the information to get one. All right, that's it for this video. Stay creative, stay productive.